So that the condo they might not make any money.
Yeah.
So let me tell you,
Yeah.
that's
And then we are lower rates now.
Yeah. But do you think that those people that bought in the 80s and 90s, how many of those people actually didn't buy a property when the market is higher? Those are the people that are actually buying a secondary home because they have more like equity. So even though that they have bought before,
You went back too far.
Yeah.
Not 80s.
yeah,
80s now they're retiring.
sorry,
They're downsizing, they get it out.
like 90s or
Probably
the 2000s,
late
right?
90s,
So they
2000s,
have like
yes.
equities, right?
Yeah.
So these are the people that actually bought a secondary home. Why? Because they've seen this market and now they are trapped. So even though that they have this house, right?
How they are trapped? Sorry.
They were trapped because they bought, so they
In the
own a
late
property.
90s, 2000s?
Right. They have like equities, right?
Right.
So majority of those people bought a secondary home,
Right.
right? So now, yeah, so they bought a secondary home which now underwater. So
How? When did they buy it?
No, if they have
Back
they
then-
have so
No,
much
no,
equity.
here.
It's those
A
people
secondary
bought it.
home.
They did well.
They did well. It's the people who bought
no,
it.
hear me out. Until like you're understanding me. So they own a property, right? So they have now like equity. So they start buying like property, a secondary home.
But you mentioned late
like
90s.
refinance.
I get what
You say
You're wrong about the timing.
the timing.
You're wrong about the
The
timing.
timing.
Okay, let me finish. He's wrong about the timing.
Timing, you said it. You
Those
said, yeah.
people bought it like
Late 90s, 2000s,
they have
they're smiling. Nothing to worry about.
They bought houses at like 200,000.
Okay, fine. Okay, but
That's like a down payment.
there's a lot of them. Here's what I'm trying to
Let
say,
me
right?
finish.
There are a lot of them people that have bought 1, 2, or 3 properties. Now they are
Okay.
trapped.
I get
But
you.
when?
Yes. It's,
Like you know,
Late
like during
90s,
the, no, like
2000s?
during the pandemic when the
Oh,
the market
then
crashed.
that's
you were talking
different.
about 80s.
No,
I know,
You said
but-
80s just now.
Yeah, the 80s people
And
that
the
have
90s
an
people?
equity. They bought in the
90s.
80s.
90s are-
90s,
90s are the
whatever
most.
okay, so like whatever, like whoever have like
Let me
equity.
finish. Okay.
Sure.
So when you say late 80s, 90s, those people are sitting on pair equity. They don't even have to worry about. Yes.
90s, 2000s, don't have to worry.
So
They have
let
an
me tell
equity,
you,
but a majority of those people have bought a property, a
I
secondary
get
home.
it, but it still will carry itself, even if you're late 80s,
Alex,
90s.
you're mixing it up.
wrong.
Just now you said, you said 80s and then you said
During the
During the
80s
pandemic.
and like 90s, right?
pandemic.
Like
I think you're referring to
a
pandemic.
primary home.
No. Listen, let me.
Who bought secondary homes in the pandemic?
About the timing. Let me,
No, here.
Let me finish.
Okay, go
Let me
ahead,
finish.
go ahead.
He's
Okay.
wrong about the timing. At the time, people bought it in 80s and 90s. They're
They're
laughing.
laughing,
right now.
Let me ask you a question,
Okay, let
right?
me finish.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You're right about people like underneath the water. It's the people bought at the wrong time.
No, you,
And when
no,
was
you
that?
might understanding it
The last
incorrectly.
5 years. Some, if you
Let
look
me
at
correct it.
CPI,
Yeah.
right now the average price of Canada is reached at 2017 level. Throughout, if you look at the entire Canada, throughout like east to west.
Okay, here.
So people bought at 90s and 80s. They're still in our.
Do you think? Okay. Do you think that the people that bought in the 80s are mortgage free now?
Yeah.
Should be most of them.
It should be, but that's not what the like
They
reality.
took money out
is.
and they bought secondary homes.
know
Yeah,
what-
they bought a secondary home.
And what happened to
third
them?
home.
They're smiling.
Yeah. So,
And so like when they bought a secondary home, their mortgage, they're still carrying a
mortgage.
like mortgage on
Agreed.
their primary home.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So now they come to the point that where they have second property, third like property, fourth.
And the values
I
drop.
doubt well, yeah, and the value drop.
But remember, they bought here.
Yeah.
It went here. It came back here.
Their primary home, yes, right?
No.
But the investment property
As well.
that they have
yes,
now,
what time did they? If they bought in 90s,
Timing.
they don't have
Right.
to
They have to worry about nothing.
if they
Yeah.
bought during the pandemic times, because a
Pandemic.
majority,
No, pandemic is different, Alex.
You're talking
The pandemic, they're underwater. They're all underwater.
Yeah.
correct,
Yes.
yeah. So the majority of
the
them.
80s, 90s, and the same level.
Listen.
Like what I'm trying to like say was that the people that owns a property back then
They're
that have an
laughing.
equity,
They're
they are
laughing.
laughing then until they
They're
bought this
laughing now,
property.
too. Alex.
Until they bought how many-
They bought in the pandemic.
until they bought something
In the
on
pandemic.
the pandemic, correct?
Oh, well, if they bought in the pandemic,
that's
that's
right.
different.
So majority of those,
That's different.
those people.
That's different. So
That's
my
what I'm trying to
saying
tell
is
you.
People,
Yeah.
the people who had to worry about who had to worry about anything, people actually bought anything after 2017. You may say since like the pandemic 2020, but the markets are even the GTA. You might
It's picking up.
Yeah, in GTA you might be somewhat fine and stuff, but
Sassy, if you
yeah.
compare 17 with 2021,
yeah, that's a big takeout.
oh, it's a big
Yeah, that's a big
Gap.
takeout. Yeah,
upward gap.
yes, upward cap.
Yep.
But certain areas, like special condos,
Yes, especially condos, correct.
it's back at like 2017
And pre-construction condos.
level. Yeah, it might be at 2017 level.
Yep.
Not 2021, 2017 level.
So
So
back
take
to
a look
Alex.
at- yeah.
Back to Alex.
Okay, go ahead.
Back to Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody bought a home in 1995,
Yeah.
200,000 a bungalow.
I'll be laughing.
And right, yeah, definitely. But in 2020, they took money out from that bungalow and
And
they
they started
bought
buying.
a secondary home, investment home.
Right.
That, yes.
The second
That's right.
Secondary
That's
home.
what I'm,
primary.
that's
Not a
what
pri-
I'm trying to tell you, because majority of the investors are the people that in that
Did that.
era.
They did that. They
are-
came and they pulled
about
money out then.
80% of investors are that kind of people.
But they are not as bad. They will not be good, but not as bad as.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, even if you bought at 1995, if you took the equity and bought a second, people bought at 1995 still laughing.
Yes. But they have the mortgage.
Oh, it's
So yes,
$200,000.
the investment, the secondary home,
Yeah.
yes, that,
The
When do you-
home,
when you
for
refi-
example, if back in 1995, they
Uh-huh.
bought it for 200,000, even
Yeah.
150,000 or whatever, right?
bungalow
Let's just say, for example,
150,
Yeah.
So you're
So,
200K.
they took the 150,000, but at the time they refinanced at 2,000, it would be 1.12.
Okay,
depending.
let's just
1
say, for
million,
example-
they still have 800,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just say, for example,
The
that
house is still paid off.
how?
The,
How is it
the
paid off?
principal.
The
Yeah, they took
principal-
money out.
They took the money out, so there's
So
still
they
a
only have
mortgage.
20% mortgage.
Like, what
They
about this
still have
type of
80%
property?
of-
Right. So the money, they took 20% out to
Yeah.
buy the secondary home.
But they
Second and third home.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So yes. So
So
they.
they're
Right.
still carrying a
So-
mortgage now,
Right.
right?
So those again.
those are the people that I'm
Alex,
talking
I
about.
agree. I think
Yeah.
Sassy will agree too.
Yeah.
Yes, those who bought, forget 80s.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk 90s.
Yeah.
Our like I go back to 1990, 1989, 1990. I
Right.
could tell you in the 1990s and 1995,
Yeah.
those who bought homes,
Yeah.
10 years after, most of them didn't have any mortgages. But
Look.
if they took the money out
Yeah.
in that 2020, 2023 to make their investment, yes, I agree to what you're
That's
saying.
right. And
Yes,
if you look at,
I agree.
If you look at the condo right now, majority of them are coming from that like era. They bought it in the pandemic days.
And I know, no, Alex, you're right, because I have like 3 or 4 who
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
Exactly what Alex, I have 3 or 4 of them can move the condos,
That's
and
right.
they're-
Yeah.
Yes, because that
trapped.
investment
Yeah.
in that period, you see, Sassy was saying,
Yeah.
the time, what I thought you said was they bought back then and they made an investment back then.
That's not what I said. I said the
They
people.
bought back then, but they invested in COVID.
If you look at the a majority
But
of people,
even if you bought it in like 1995, if I lose out on the second one,
It's still
fine.
good.
I'll take that as a loss.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're still comfortable.
They're
You
taking
can,
a loss.
Right.
Man. They're not
Yeah.
dying to survive.
okay.
it's not good, it's not good, but they're not
Right.
bad.
so if you hold on to it, and if you didn't do like anything on the pandemic days, like you're safe. Yes, I
you're
agree with
better,
you.
you're better.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Ramesh. People bought in the late 80s,
Yeah.
right? Like he said, 80s and the 90s, and people bought those times. They're not gonna over leverage.
That's
Very
what
careful.
you. Yeah. That's
They're
what you
not-
think.
Very
it is.
careful.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think those
Yeah.
are the people
No.
who leverage.
They're
People-
very, very, very,
Yeah. So
you know,
the people who leverage is those people bought in the 2000s.
probably, yes.
Cause I was even talking
Yeah,
to
those
some
people in the 90s, I think.
yeah,
They-
Do you know how many?
they know what happened.
You know how
Yeah.
many?
They like we
Do you
seen
know-
it all.
And don't you see, remember in the late 80s, prices went so.
Yeah, and they seen it all.
About 80,
Do you know what
88, 89, it started this way.
So this is the thing. Where the people bought 2000, they're the one who might be under the water. And
They're the ones, yes.
Because, and this is why, last like 10 years, 15 years ago, when the boom was happening and all that stuff, the people who are willing to take the risk is the new immigrants. people came from like Asia and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because where they come